Hey friends, I'm Christy and you're listening to Rock the Damn Boat. If you've ever bitten your tongue to keep the peace or said yes when every part of you wanted to say no, this one's for you. We're diving into the messy, real stuff that people pleasers like me have spent years avoiding. It's time to have the hard conversations, shake things up, and learn to stand tall even when it makes waves. And while we might be embodying boat rocking energy here on this podcast, I am also a firm believer in wellness and mindfulness practices, which is why I am launching a membership that is Rock the Damn Boat meets the Rooted Soul, and I want you to be one of the founding members. I am offering a special introductory rate right now. You go to thrivewithchristy.com to learn more about the Thrive Collective, and I hope to see you there in the community. Let's tune into the conversation. I am so excited to have my guest today. Her and I have known each other in the pet industry for a very long time. She started in sales and worked her way to leadership over nearly 13 years at the pet firm. She's championed animal welfare through shelter programs and is now driving growth as regional sales director at PetSource Enterprises. Purpose-driven and deeply rooted in the pet industry, which is what makes us such kindred spirits, I want to welcome to the show Lori Wahl. Welcome. Happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. It's so great to be here. And yeah, this will be fun. So I'm excited.
Yes, I just think that you and I have sort of peripherally crossed paths throughout our time
Yes.
working with PetSmart and different things. And as we've gotten to know each other, realized just how much we have in common. What got you into the pet industry originally?
You know, I grew up loving animals. I could have any animal, any pet my parents would allow me when I was a kid, which included a cat, a rabbit, a bird, and fish. Never had a dog though. That was the interesting part.
Interesting.
So I always loved pets, right? And when I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, I knew a couple of people that worked in the pet industry, and I had been in sales all along selling other things, right? Very not fun, like computers. And my friends that had been in the pet industry for a long time got me an interview at the pet firm. What you realize, it is actually kind of a difficult industry to get into. Once people get in, they stay. And so, and it's small but big. Like everyone's like, oh, it must be huge. And it is big, but everybody knows everybody. So yeah, I was kind of fortunate to know some people that connected me with the pet firm. And that was the beginning of a now 17-year career.
Incredible. Did you do any kind of rescue work prior to your time in the pet industry?
So yeah, that's a great question. So I actually moved to Phoenix. It was another one of those happenstance things. Like I was working with somebody, this was before I started in pet, and they were like, hey, we have volunteer hours that we should use. And I was like, we do? I didn't even know, right? She was like, yeah, I was thinking about volunteering at an animal shelter. And I don't remember how she or we picked Maricopa Animal Care and Control, but that was the shelter that we picked. Little did I know that that would be a 20-year relationship with that shelter and change facets many times. And I'm sure we'll talk about that. But yeah, that was the beginning.
Yeah, that's great. I did an orientation with Maricopa. I think I maybe volunteered a couple of times, and like so many volunteering opportunities, it's sometimes time is our biggest challenge, but I know that I when I've suggested to people, oh, volunteer, then
Yeah.
everybody's like, oh, here's the list of reasons I can't. And then we can talk more, about how to encourage
Yeah.
people to do that. But when I was younger in my 20s, I started volunteering in Houston. They had
Uh-huh.
Friends of Bark, which was worked with the city shelter, and
Yep.
I loved doing that. I would take I had that healthy dose of detachment, because so many people will say, oh, I can't help in animal rescue. I would just want to take them all home. But you develop this idea that you love seeing them find homes, but they don't all have to be yours. So I was good at
Yes.
helping with Houston, and then that's how I got to know PetSmart, because we did the adoptions out of PetSmart.
And so we all start somewhere, right?
What were the parallels sort of happening between what you were doing in rescue and what you were doing in your career? Did you feel like those like it created this bigger passion for what you were selling because of your involvement with pet rescue.
Yeah, and yeah, that's also a great question. And I do think there were so many synergies when I started in the pet industry. I was so excited, and there was just so many amazing products. And then I had this like, oh my gosh, we're gonna do so many amazing things for animals in need, right? And that wasn't really a concept at my company that I started at. They threw away samples that were perfectly usable. Like we didn't really do a lot for charity. I mean, we participated in whatever PetSmart Charities was doing. Above and beyond that, that wasn't really a thing. Because I was already involved with, at the time it was Friends of Animal Care and Control, which sounds similar to Friends of the Houston shelters. Yeah, so we were the fundraising arm for the county shelter. They can't raise funds directly, right? And they had a big gala every year, and I turned that into a major event for PetSmart buyers to come to, and then also to the vendors to participate. So at one time, I think I had 10 pet firm vendors buying tables, doing sponsorships. We had those filled with people from PetSmart and the vendors. So we turned it into kind of like a business, but a fundraising event. So there were so many synergies that I was able to happen because of being in the pet industry and still being connected to animal welfare. I was able to help coordinate donating truckload of product that would have otherwise probably gone honestly in the trash. So from product to events, I was pretty proud of that because I think I proved to my founder at the time, Mike Sanroman, he was like, don't forget, we're here to sell stuff for pets. I'm like, but we can do both. And I did both. Still to this day, I remind him of that. I'm like, we did both. It's not like it used to be. We don't have that many opportunities still, but it was a good run making that all work.
That's incredible because you brought together these networks of people, and I wouldn't have thought about. You're right. There's so much that can either be wasted. How can we turn that around? And then, like you said, I think the pet industry, and definitely for me, and we were kind of talking about this before we hopped on. There's just this idea that we are all passionate about our pets, and so that we bring that to each other and our connections with each other. So to be able to meld those two things sounds like an incredible win-win. I think about that was one of the reasons I loved working for PetSmart was PetSmart Charities and the efforts, and after things like natural disasters and being able to
Yeah.
send product. And I'm sure the vendor community was a huge part of that as well. So that's
Yeah.
definitely part of what has kept me in the pet industry. What was it about the pet industry that really hooked you? Because you have not left either. So
Right. I kind of left and then I'm back. um,
yes.
you know, the people are really, honestly, the people are really great, right? It has definitely changed a lot since I started. It was very male dominated. There weren't a lot of young people really coming in. When I came in, that like all started to shift. You started seeing younger people come into the industry. You started seeing private equity money come in.
Mhm.
So it's changed a lot. But at the root of it, I would say the majority of companies, they really are trying to make better products for pets. It is all about sales and the sales of those products, but I have gotten to work with some amazing brands that I personally still buy and recommend today. Those brands that really do make a difference. And they're not going to be your biggest brands, those mission-driven brands. They do well, they stay around, but they're some of my favorite products, not only to use, but to sell, because if I really believe in it, I can pretty much sell anything. So that's what kind of keeps me motivated, right? Is those brands that really are there
Yeah,
to make a difference. And they are out there.
that's so true. I think about when I first started my career, I was in sporting goods and I worked for Academy Sports and Outdoors, which is based in Houston. They're currently doing this huge campaign around how family oriented that business is. And I know I thrived there because I knew exactly who I was buying for. It was the kid who's signing up for soccer for the first time. And so at PetSmart, it's the same way. It's, you've got somebody getting their very first pet. And when we're selling those products that support that, I totally get that. Now, so you translated that passion into a full-time opportunity helping at Heidi's Village in Phoenix. So tell us a little bit about that transition.
I had been in helping in animal welfare for now 20 years. And I started out literally a regular volunteer walking dogs. And then I helped train the new dog walkers. And then I actually did a bunch of media for Maricopa Animal Care and Control. I would go on TV and do Pet of the Week every Saturday morning. And so that was huge. And then I had an opportunity to be on the board of directors for the fundraising for Friends of Animal Care and Control. So that was huge. I didn't know that I didn't ever think I would actually be able to work in animal welfare. It's not an easy, I don't want to even call it industry because it's really not an industry per se, but it's a tough area to work in. The burnout is high. You see a lot of not great things, shocking things about people and what they do to animals. And it's just hard. So I didn't really think I could ever work in animal welfare. And then one day I ended up at Heidi's Village and I was like, what is this? Listen, where has it been hiding in Phoenix, right? Because I've been in animal welfare forever. I'd heard the name, and then I went to go volunteer there to help one day with the dogs. And I was like, this place is amazing. And then when I learned what it's for and, how unique it is, I was like, wow. But nothing really happened for like 2 years. And then I actually ended up knowing the executive director at the time. We were friends who became friends on the board of Animal Care and Control.
Friends of.
Yeah, friends of. And she was executive director and we had dinner and she was like, hey, I need a development director. And I was like, okay, I'll keep that in mind for somebody else, right? Not even thinking about me. And the other person that was with us at dinner, she goes, oh my God, you'd be great at that. And I'm like, what? I'm not a professional fundraiser. Like, I don't know how to do that. And then after that dinner, I just kept thinking about it. And it became like this obsessive thought of like, maybe I can do that, right? And so that was kind of how it all came to fruition. I think I needed a little break from what I'd been doing for the last 15 years. I think that was the timing was everything, right? We always talk about timing. It was a big deal. I was making the most money I'd ever made by far. I could pretty much do my job with my eyes closed, and I still decided to take the leap and go. I went and talked to my husband and I was like, hey, I really want to do this. It's a 40% pay cut, but I think I can make a difference. And he was like, you
Yes.
have to do it. So he's a huge supporter of animal welfare. We actually met on the Friends of Animal Care Control board. That's how I met my now husband. So yeah, he was kind of like a team decision and I went for it.
It's incredible. We'll talk more about, career pivots and what that looks like, but I think it's so important. What your heart wants matters. I learned that from a teacher years ago, and I just continue to model that in my life of we have to follow these things to see where they lead. So what makes Heidi's Village different? What is it, shelter,
Yeah.
or how do they represent animal welfare with what they do?
Heidi's Village is really a support system for all the rescues and shelters in the valley and human services support. So it's this really unique entity. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. We are there to support the hundreds of rescues that are in Phoenix. There's multiple large shelters, and then also support human services organizations that are helping people keep their pets in time of crisis. It's a unique model that doesn't exist anywhere else. People come take tours from other cities and they're like, oh my God, every big city needs a Heidi's Village because every big city, Houston, they all have an animal welfare crisis. That is
Yes.
what it is built for, is to support those organizations so they can do more and save more lives.
That's incredible. I love what you were saying about helping people in times of crisis keep their
Yes.
pets, because that was some of the work that PetSmart Charities had done with Pets Hotels. People's animals are what help them in times of need.
Like the last thing you want to do is give up your pet and you feel like it's your only option. Like we do not
Yes.
want that for people. A lot of rescues, I'm sure they are foster based. They have a shoestring budget and they do a lot with very little. Our founder's vision was like, well, what if I built this facility where they could actually use it as their own facility? And then they had on-site medical care, cost boarding, vet care, behavior support. A lot of these animals have behavior issues. They were raised, they were kept outside, whatever caused it, they have behavior issues. So what if they could get all of that on one site? And what's happening now is rescue partners who were very foster based are actually completely changing their model. So they are now using us as their facility. They don't do a lot with fosters because everybody's on site. They can bring their volunteers there. They can do all their social media on site. It just makes everything more efficient for these rescues.
Yes, fostering it's a finite network. I mean, you've got people who can stay in rotation, but then maybe they get their own pets. I'm in the middle of nowhere, Texas, but there's a large facility near me that has recently expanded, and they were so relieved because they were tapped out of fosters, and now they're able to board and house more animals. You mentioned people bring their volunteers from their rescue groups. Are
Mhm.
there on-site volunteers at Heidi's as well?
Yeah. Our volunteers supplement with dog walking, care, sometimes cleaning, socialization. They can do a lot, but our staff, because of the nature of the animals, that level of care is much higher than a standard organization's. Every dog gets walked every day. Every dog gets some type of enrichment every day. They get a second activity. They are on a very unique schedule to help them build, because a lot of these dogs, they have no schedule, right? So morning activity, everybody gets walked. Then it's feeding and nap time, like literally it's nap time. And then the staff goes on a break and then they come back and then it's all the afternoon stuff.
What has been the most rewarding part for you?
A lot of the animals that would not normally get care, they would be euthanized because one, they have medical needs. Two, they have behavioral needs, or they have both, and these rescues have a place to take them. That's about 800 dogs last year that were saved that normally wouldn't be, just because there's just not the resources otherwise. My other favorite thing was a kitten nursery on site, which is for newborn kittens. Also animals that would unfortunately get euthanized. They require 24/7 care, and that is just not an abundant thing in animal welfare. It's very expensive, but it's so worth it, because if we can get those little kittens from newborns just to 8 weeks, it only takes 2 months. They're the most adoptable animals in the US. So once you put those kittens up for adoption, they're right out. There's just tough days, right? Like anything. If you go down and you hold a kitten, I promise you, you will feel better. Like I would literally go down to our little adoption center and hold a kitten, and magically my problems disappeared. So yeah.
That needs to be our biggest takeaway for anyone listening. If you're having a bad
Right.
day, go pet a kitten, and then maybe they'll become
Or
a
pet a kitten.
volunteer.
The most rewarding part is saving the most vulnerable animals. Think about big, large dogs with medical and behavior, and then you think about kittens. Those are the most euthanized animals, and we're saving those. About 800 dogs last year, and then close to 700 kittens. So pretty big numbers.
Yes, that's an amazing success rate. And I'm thinking about it in terms of my math brain. It's like
Yep.
that's 5 animals a day that you're saving.
Yeah.
In animal rescue, we're always talking about spaying and neutering your pet.
Mhm.
Does Heidi's get involved there, or just help educate, or actually offer those services?
Every animal that comes through and gets adopted through our rescue partners or on site our kittens are all spayed or neutered before they're adopted. Of course, that's like non-negotiable, right? We'll probably do about 2,400 spay neuters. That was what we did last year. That's a pretty good number. Yeah, back to your math. I mean, I don't know how many that is a day, but it's a pretty good number. And then through another rescue partner, we actually do community spay neuter days. They have the front end figured out, where they find the people that are really in need of free spay neuter. They get those people, they vet them, and then they host the day on site in our clinic. And so we fix from anywhere, probably usually about 50 to 60 usually large breed dogs. And we focus on the dogs that are most prevalent in the shelter, which right now are pitties, German shepherds. So that we're trying to stem that from happening again. So I couldn't be any more of a proponent of the value of that. And it really is the only way that we can fix any animal welfare crisis. That is a solution.
Definitely. For me, that's top of mind because I live, again, in rural Texas. We've got things like stray cats everywhere that aren't fixed. We've got people dumping dogs. That is a horrible issue out in the country. People
Yeah.
have unwanted litters or behavioral problem, like you said, and they might end up just, oh, I'm going to drive to the country and leave my pet there. And it was heartbreaking for me, having grown up in the city, that this was a thing. I know the shelters here do all they can, but I'm the same way. I definitely want to make sure that we're doing all we can to help spay and neuter. How did your corporate background help inform what you're doing as the developmental director when you were doing that full time for Heidi's?
I didn't really know it when I was getting into it. but it is literally the exact thing. Working with a buyer is literally just like with a donor, right? You're trying to understand their needs, what they care about, where they're going, what their passion is. I couldn't be any more the same. Working with buyers and donors it was a really easy transition for me. It was like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing here. And I would say that was probably the biggest. I mean, as much as you want to say like nonprofit is nonprofit and all that, it's still an organization that has to run like a business so it can stay around. There's just a lot
Yes.
of similarities. There's business units within Heidi. Most
Hmm.
shelters have some income sources, whether it's adoption fees or there's some type of income. There's a lot of synergies, but definitely working with buyers and donors is pretty identical.
I wouldn't have thought about it like that, but you're right. Anything, whether it's a church or my husband's in the medical industry, and sure, the doctors are saving lives and there's a business to it. One of the biggest differences, and of course, one of the reasons we really wanted to highlight this today is that there does need to be this huge base of volunteers. And just like you're talking about with fosters, there's a lot of unpaid positions in animal welfare. We need people to step up and help with that. With Heidi's Village or any of the Phoenix shelters, how can people get involved? You mentioned fostering, so that's the biggest
Yep.
need.
I would say that's one of the biggest needs. I mean, fostering, like it just, especially for those animals who need extra, you will save a life because with the second you open up a kennel, you make space for another animal to come in. It's that simple. So you're really saving two lives. I've always talking about when they talk about fostering. So fostering is huge. I mean, donating, become a monthly donor for something that you care about. It's $10 a month makes a difference. So don't think that your amount is too small. Donating obviously to nonprofits is huge. Volunteering is great if you know, like, hey, maybe you don't have the money, but you have time. Time is always valuable. I mean, again, anything that we take load off of staff helps them to free up their time working with animals, right? Which is what they're really there for. So those are kind of the trifecta always, you know, donate, foster, volunteer. Those are ways you can help. I got on the board by just helping out the board. They needed donated items for their gift baskets. Who knew that just giving items for a gift basket would lead to a 6-year board career, right? And some people, I get it. Like the shelter, it's not an easy place to be. The first couple of times I went to county and did what I did, I cried. Like I left, I went home and cried. And you know what? Then I had to reframe my thinking. I was like, you know, we talked about animals being dumped, right? That happens in Phoenix all the time. They're literally dumped in the desert to die, right? So I started thinking about, well, these animals are safe. They're being fed, occasionally getting walked. They get enrichment. There are worse fates than being in a shelter. So I just had to start reframing my thinking. So I encourage people, if you think it's too hard, just remember it's not about you, it's about the animals, right? Go do it for the animals. It gets easier, right? Like sometimes it gets easier, but you just have to think there are worse things these animals could be facing than sitting in this shelter. And you can make their day by getting them out for a walk, by even just passing by and giving them a treat. So all those things make a difference.
Yes. Going back to you saved 1,500 lives last year. It's just so you think about that perspective. And I don't know if you have the numbers for Phoenix, but this is a very old statistic. But back when I was doing rescue with Houston, there were 80,000 animals euthanized every year. And this
Yeah.
was probably 15, 20 years ago. I'm sure it's double that at this point. Now, while that can seem like a really daunting statistic, then think about every single one that you do save because you're
Yeah.
fostering or helping with adoptions. Not every shelter might have this, but when I was with working with Friends of Bark, I transported animals. So
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
that fit really easily into my schedule because on Saturday morning, I would go load up the back of the truck, drive the animals, get them set up at PetSmart for adoptions, go do my Saturday stuff, come back, pick them up, hope that I was picking up a lot of empty carriers and then drop them back off at the shelter. So
Yeah.
there's ways that from a time perspective you can make it fit into your schedule.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
always
And
have to look the same.
I love that you brought that up because yes, okay, let's say you like try the shelter. You cannot volunteer in a shelter. There are a lot of things you can do outside of the shelter that still benefit a shelter, right? To your point, dropping off and picking up for events, going and working the events. with adoption events, right? Helping raise money. You can do fundraisers on your own and never step foot inside. When you think about volunteering, don't just think about in the shelter. There are a million other ways outside of, if it's really not something you can do. I could tell you the most need is always in the shelter, but there are a lot of very important things you can do outside of shelter to support the animals in your community, for sure.
You and I both have such a soft spot for animal welfare, and I hope that anyone who is listening that maybe has been, on the fence or wanting to start doing something more, that they take this conversation as a way to step into that role. And speaking of roles, so you relocated to the East Coast, and so for you that looks a little different now. I'm in this break from my corporate career, and was difficult maybe to step out of something I'd done for so long. So you and I had talked about the emotions that go along with, it's okay to change your mind and it's okay to switch again. So what are you doing today?
The honest truth of it is I didn't have a choice. My husband decided to go back to professional services / banking. There's a ton of banking in Charlotte. And I could tell you, I was not very thrilled about moving here to the East Coast. I grew up in Colorado, moved to California, was in Arizona for 22 years. And so I very much feel like I'm a West Coast, Southwest person. So that was like just a mental adjustment. I knew I couldn't do the Heidi's role the same, right? Because it's very boots on the ground. You have to be available for tours and donor meetings. So I knew that was going to change as well. So that was a lot. It was really hard. 22 years of professional, personal, animal welfare relationships, just, building that community over that whole time and then having to leave it was really tough. One of the cool things that means a lot to me is, I had worked for Mike San Roman at the pet firm for 12 years. He actually sold the company and I was there for a little while longer. Then I went over to work for him at Pet Stores for 3 years before I was like, hey, I'm really going to try this nonprofit thing. So I worked with him for pretty much my whole pet career. And so when this change was going to happen, I went to him and I said, hey, I'm moving to the East Coast. They had an East Coast position for. And I said, hey, I'm moving to the East Coast and I need a job. And he was like, well, I don't really think that's the right fit for you, but we'll figure something out, basically is what he told me. So, he told me I would always have a job with him, but when you really go ask somebody and they make it happen, that's
Right.
pretty amazing. So the cool thing was, even though I picked up everything in my whole life and moved to the East Coast, at least I'm working for people I know. I know the team. I know what I'm doing. It's new retailers, so there's a new challenge. So it's definitely a mixed bag. The other great thing is I got to help Heidi's for the first quarter. So I was kind of flying back and forth because there was a lot of momentum happening and we didn't want to lose that. But it was like a soft transition, which I think really helped. But I have to figure out what my next steps are in animal welfare. I haven't really I don't have a good gauge on what it looks like out here in Charlotte. Now that I'm not doing 2 full-time jobs, I'm going to, figure out what it looks like out here and how can I be most impactful? That's really the question, because as much as boots on the ground is, I think there's a lot to be said for that. I definitely, after being on a board and you see how much impact you can make at a higher level, I think that's where I feel most impactful. I need to start figuring out what that's going to look like here.
I appreciated hearing about the different changes in your career, and pet has always been the through line, animal
Yes.
welfare being that through line. I'm at this interesting season of life where I'm not sure what's coming next. I'm sure it could land me back in the pet industry because we have a mutual friend, Stephen Clark, and he always says,
Yep.
once you're in pet for 3 years, you never leave. Is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners about animal rescue? I think we've given them lots of opportunities to get
Yeah.
involved, but want to make
Yeah.
sure that if there's anything else you want to share that you do.
Just figure out a way to get involved. If you love animals and honestly, if you love people, this is what I think everyone's really catching on to is you can't just help animals or you can't just help people. This is a community problem. You can't treat one without the other, especially these pet owners who really want to keep their pets. Like, how do we help them keep those pets? That's shelter prevention, right? So figure out a way to get involved. Don't put it off. Your community needs you. The pets in your community need you. The people in your community need you. So that would be my big thing, is just figure it out. Like, start somewhere. What happened to me is like, I literally started somewhere. It wasn't even my idea. Someone else suggested it. And every time someone came to me with another, like, hey, will you do this? I literally always said yes. I kept saying yes, 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 yes. And it just evolved into this whole life of its own, right? I think also make sure you have balance. So that's another thing that happens when to people in animal welfare, right? You lose balance and some people can really neglect themselves. So find some balance if you get sucked in. But yeah, I mean, just start somewhere and you'll figure it out and you'll figure out what your niche is and where you feel comfortable and where you think you make the most difference. So yeah, just start getting involved. That'd be my first thing.
That's great advice, and we're all talking now about how much more we need community, and I think that
Yes.
you can meet other volunteers. Like you said, there's the human element. For you, it led to a marriage. Now we're not
Yes.
guaranteeing that for anyone, but to be able to meet
Yeah.
like-minded people who
Yeah.
are as passionate as you
Yes.
are, that creates that whole human connection too. I still keep in touch with some of the people that I knew from Friends of Bark. Gosh, that's
Yeah.
been 20, 30 years ago. So I really wanted to have you on the show, Lori, not only to talk about Heidi's Village, but just because you rocked the boat in a way of going, from corporate to nonprofit full time
Yep.
and exploring what that passion meant for you in your life. So I always like to close the show by asking people who their boat rocking role model is.
Mhm. So I asked you before if I could have 2. So I have 2. I have a
Yep.
fun what I would call fun. Some people would probably judge me for it, and then I have the what I would consider the serious one. So my fun one is I am a avid Howard Stern listener, and I don't think there's probably anyone who has rocked the boat more. But not just like
Would agree.
not just in the way of, like, doing crazy stuff on the radio. The innovation that he did, doing things on the radio that even people couldn't see, but you could feel, and you started to learn the characters, and just turning from, like, being a disc jockey that just played records all the day to, like, literally a talk show. Just all those things he did, and I find him hilarious, and I don't miss a show, an episode, but just innovating after innovating just over and over and over again. So I think he's somebody who's rocked the boat in multiple ways. And I do actually shockingly learn a lot from him. And he's changed a lot from what his show was, 20, 30 years ago. It's completely different now. But I always joke he's my longest relationship ever, but it really is like that. So he believed so strongly in what he was doing and he was trying to change things in radio. And it was just nothing. If you ever watch the movie, watch Private Parts.
Yes.
It's a fantastic movie. And you'll see like what he had to go through to do what he wanted to do. My other rock the boat, which is way more serious, but why I believe in spay neuter so much is in Phoenix, when I started volunteering at Maricopa Animal Care Control, we were at 50-50 euthanasia. That means 50% of the animals that came in didn't make it out. Trying not to get sad. And there was one person, Dr. Rodrigo Silva, and he had a vision that like just having animal care control was not sustained. Like this isn't the way it should be. These are adoptable animals. They're often people's pets. And he had a vision for changing that. And so what he did is he started figuring out how to do free spay neuter. And that was what changed Maricopa County. It went from 50-50 euthanasia to the time I turned off that board where all we did was raise money and divert funds into free spay neuter. And we were at 90-10. So that means only 10% of the animals that came into county got euthanized. And that to me, for somebody to stand up and say, we have to do this differently. We can't keep euthanizing these animals like this. It's just it's not right. There has to be a better way. And I think that is so admirable. And, he literally changed the whole culture of Maricopa County. He changed the way we look at animal sheltering. You have 3 days on stray hold and then you're euthanized. I mean, that's really how it was. So he changed how everything was done. And that, by doing that spay neuter, and I mean, we funneled millions of dollars into the community. It took a lot of money, but it worked. And so that's why I know that spay neuter is the answer, because I've seen the beginning and I've seen how it can work. And so, like I tell people, we don't need to prove the model. The model's been proven. It's been proven in many counties and cities in the country. It just takes the funding and it takes making it free and accessible for everyone. And he had that vision and he literally changed the entire landscape of animal welfare in Maricopa County. And for that, I admire him so much. He was a veterinarian too, which I think is really helpful, but he doesn't practice anymore. He doesn't do anything in animal welfare anymore. He's taking a well-deserved retirement, but I will always admire him for doing that for our community and our county and all the animals that ended up not being euthanized. It's I would say tens of thousands of animal lives have been saved over the last 20 years because of that. Sorry for
Wow,
getting
what an
emotional.
incredible mission. No, I think I'm welling up too, because I think going back to that statistic from Houston 20 years ago
Yeah.
was 80,000 animals. And you
It
think
was
if
the
you
same in
can,
Phoenix.
yes,
Yeah, it was literally, I think, almost exact same number. We're getting euthanized. And he had the vision to say, we have to do it different. How do we do this differently? So,
yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So,
and I think that's a great example of, if you are able to donate whatever amount, that those are the
yeah,
types of programs that can go to fund.
you can just fund spay neuters. If that's what you believe in, then find somebody who's doing it well and right, and fund them for sure.
Well, you have me thinking a lot about everything that I had done in animal
Yeah.
welfare, and I have been maybe away from it a little too long. So I'll have to see how I can help in my community. And for anyone listening, there are definitely things that they can do in their own community. Lori, it's been a pleasure, and I
Yeah.
am so grateful for you coming on the show, and can't wait to hear back from people how they are getting involved. We'll have to
Yeah.
follow up through a poll or something, because I think that it definitely inspires others. And like you said, when they think about their own pets and maybe how they came to be, and then giving back
Yeah.
in that space.
Yes. Just
Great.
start
Well, thank
somewhere.
you. I will put the links to rescue opportunities. I'm sure there's some national directories too where people can get involved. And yeah, I just want to thank you for coming, and thank you everyone for listening to the show.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Rock the Damn Boat, a podcast produced and recorded by Christy Hughes. You can follow, subscribe on both Apple and Spotify, and your 5-star review goes a long way. Thank you so much for your support of the show.